Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
What's the weirdest thing you guys have seen while out on a night walk?
I have zero explanation for what just happened to me. My wife and kids are asleep, so I guess this will be my way of trying to rationalize it. I live north of Central Florida. There are a lot of lakes in my specific county. You could even describe this area I'm in as swampy. My backyard is really plain looking except for the back part of my property where it gets kinda in a woodsy. There's an estuary that chains into a huge lake. I have insomnia. Nights like tonight I often stay up way into the late hours of the night after my family is asleep. I do so with my dog, Moose. It is a hard feeling to describe. I'd rather go sleepless some nights knowing everyone is getting proper shut-eye. My wife can't stand it, but I am restless. Tonight I decided to take a Moose, chocolate lab. I don't know why I'm including this other than the fact that this dog is my best buddy and I love him dearly, for a late stroll into the back part of my property. He loves exploring with me, and he's so keen to everything I can just tell by how he uses his nose, that he has a very good sense of when things are either business as usual or just fucking off. I've never ever in 5 years seen my dog act so bizarre. We're heading back inside from our walk and he just freezes. All of his hair sticking up. He won't budge or move a muscle. All of his attention pointed at the darkness just at the end of my property where I can't see. He lets off this loud, yet low rumble of a growl that I have never heard from him. At this point I've got a hand on my holstered pistol and want to get back inside my house. But he won't follow any of my commands. Then this sound that is haunting me right now comes from the shallow marsh about 100 yards away from us. I know we have wild animals where we live, but this wasn't even natural. By animal or human standards. It was high-pitched. It sounded like the glow that would be around the Saiyans in DBZ, I guess, is the only way to describe it. Like a Godzilla sound effect or something. I know that might not sound scary. But at 2 a.m., and how my normally calm dog's reaction is, I'm a little disturbed. I begin raising my voice to my dog as I back towards my porch. I want to go in. He refuses, and bolts toward the creek. I'm insanely upset now. It's too dark and I'm afraid for my dog with the alligators in the area. I run after him, and the noise starts again. Only this time, I see a warm array of bright orange lights popping up out of the water and directly into the sky, vanishing. Moose sees it too. He finally listens to me and we both go inside. He's shaking and won't leave my side. I don't know whether to be afraid or astonished.
I went out drinking with a friend one night going for a walk. Along a road on the edge of town we suddenly see the entire sky light up and a noise that came directly from the sky. The noise didn't come from any particular direction but seemed to come from all of the sky. We stopped and looked at each other, realizing that we saw something weird. A few minutes later we heard a noise coming from a definite direction and saw a fast-moving light travel across the sky then disappear. Purely by confidence, someone else I know happened to be driving along that road the same time that night and also saw lights in the sky.
I've seen a bunch of weirdos and schizos while out night walking, but this one was only a few days ago. Long-time lurker, so this is my first green text, so please forgive me. Walking back home at around 1:30 a.m. Hear a guy talking past a wall to my left that leads to a neighborhood. Be an avid eavesdropper because of one event of a crazy BPD lady yelling and banging on her boyfriend's door because he locked her out. Anyways, I stop and look towards the wall and listen. Couldn't really make out what he was saying. After a few seconds, I decide to walk to the wall and peek over.
Don't stare at me, I'm FBI, that is against the law, I will arrest you. How dare you stare at me?
This fucking schizo was in the bushes in between me and the wall. I was hearing this guy mumble to himself and not some well-mannered guy talking in his backyard. My face when I probably would have been stabbed if he didn't interrupt me trying to peek over the wall. Didn't say anything to him because I kind of fucked my leg trying to not fall on my ass while skateboarding, so I couldn't run if I pissed him off even more and he decided to pull some shit. I just turned around and crossed the road to the other sidewalk. Still yelling the same schizo speak at me as I crossed the street. That was it with my encounter with the bush schizo. I remember seeing a dude in those same bushes a few months back just staring at me as I walked past, and I would hear rustlings in those bushes every now and again. I don't know why, but my encounters with the bush schizo weren't scary or with any of the other freaks I see. I shit my pants when I see regular people walking towards me at night though.
Not a good idea. Depending on where you are, a skinwalker might take an interest in you.
I love walking at night, especially at late night when no one is around. I walk on streets, huge parks, forest areas, etc. I've seen some cool oddities, but I've also got my share of spooky or unexplained stuff. For instance, I was once walking in a forest around 11 p.m. this past October. And as I was walking in pitch black darkness, I decided to do a TikTok live to creep out people. As soon as I started doing the live show, the flashlight from my phone turned on and the light showed a guy was in front of me and walking towards me. I quickly tried to change paths and acknowledge his presence. So he stopped and then began circling me. What the fuck? So I decided to get the hell away. On another occasion, this was 4 years ago, at 2 a.m. I saw an owl witch. Not once, but 3 times. Each time I came back to the house and asked the wifey to check if anyone else had seen anything. And lo and behold, every time I got an encounter there were reports of Facebook groups where people have that same night encounters with the same owl witch trying to enter their house by force. In another situation, it was like 6 years ago, maybe 7, where I was walking with my headphones on, and suddenly a huge bird-like creature sprung from a patch of tall grass. The bird was white and had spectacular long wings. It flew away real quick. I never knew what kind of animal it was. It was again around 2 a.m. 4 years ago, it was getting dark while I was hiking on a trail I love to search for arrowheads. It's an amazing spot where I always find good points and old camping sites, I don't know, but probably hundreds of years old. Anyway, I suddenly started to hear a flute-like sound. At first, I thought it was the wind. But then I felt it stronger, like a flute from ancient times. At that moment a strange vibe invaded me, and I just wanted to get out of there. It wasn't out of fear of ghosts or demons, but I felt I was going to another time.
Buddy, brother and I go drop a crayfish trap at about 1:30 a.m. Why so late? Because we got jobs. Half a mile through tall grass to the river, another 0.6 mile through woods to our spot. Flashlights on, cigs burning, talking spooky stories. Make it to our spot unsoiled. It was about 100 feet of river rock before you reached actual water, with shrubs interspersed on it. Thickens as you approach the tree line. I see movement in the shrubs, tell my friends and we stop. Heavy steps moving the rocks. They hear it too. No eyes reflecting, so whatever. Walk up the shore. Sounds like rocks plunking in the river, but my friend says it's just the fish jumping. My brother drops the trap by a log and instantly a rock lands in the water a foot from him. He fucking jumps out of the water. We start shouting. Footsteps again in the shrubs. A few more rocks landing in the river. Suddenly sounds like something big runs through snapping branches on the other side of the river. Heads up to the fork where there's this farm. Some dudes had a bonfire going. Massive splashing sound. We sprint trying to see what it was, but we are too slow. The rednecks run up on the bank and see us looking for this thing too. No luck. Bro is rattled. Friend insists it was a bear that threw rocks apparently. On the way back we get lost and find a homeless campsite with a tent up. May or may not be a dead body. Creep away Metal Gear style. Not our problem. Find trail finally. Walking fast. 2:30 a.m. now. Starts to rain. Owl hoots, bad omen. Stop at the edge of the woods. Friend is like WTF. Movement ahead. A fucking emo walks out of the tall grass and blackberry bushes into our lights. Fucking rifle case and dead eyes. We don't stop. I say to him, thought you were a Bigfoot, bud, had me scared. He goes.
I'm a lot worse than a Bigfoot.
Totally deadpan. Stares at us as we leave. Tails us at a distance till we are out in the field. Don't get shot. Come back in the morning. Our trap got stolen. Fuck going outside at night.
I do take late walks, and this actually reminds me of something that stuck with me more recently. I'm not familiar with any paranormal shit, so if any of this triggers something any of you might be familiar with, I'd be curious, but I just started lurking, from the dumb moon shit. Walking my usual late night path and came across a dog or possibly a wolf? It was too far away and completely dark. It looked bigger than a dog. I saw it cross the street in front of me and disappear into the shadows of a recessed area next to a fence on my side of the street. Naturally, I crossed the street, and as soon as I did, the animal crossed back to match me. I saw it start moving, so I crossed back over myself. When I reached the middle of the street, it stopped and looked at me for a few moments before continuing and disappearing back into where it emerged from, a wooded area. A little unnerved, I decided to turn down a side street in the opposite direction and loop back around to where I was going. The second I broke off, everything was incredibly still. As I was walking, I started to hear what sounded like scraping or clawing at the fences in the yards around me. At least I think it was the fences. All I heard was wooden scraping. The clawing kept following me house to house, and I couldn't make out precisely where the sound was coming from. I was sweating at this point, and the sound followed me until I turned at a three-way junction. In my dumb illogical fear brain, I spat out my gum here and was like, oh hey, maybe the scent will throw it off. I don't know shit about how animals smell, but anything to ease the building anxiety. After I turned down that road though, the atmosphere eased up. I had thought the scratching was a dog in a yard, but there were no barks or whimpers, and it sounded like it was keeping pace with me across multiple yards. Only after I semi-jokingly consider the idea that the scratching could have been on the roofs of the houses instead.
For those wondering about Arsgang, I'm not the one who mentioned it, but I looked up a little and here's what I found. Apparently it's some Swedish thing. On Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, you go on a walk through the woods and cemetery to the local church or something like that. The folklore says that doing this will make it so you encounter all these various spirits or demons or whatever along the way. And you're not supposed to talk, laugh, or feel fear. If you do, you'll fail the Arsgang and possibly incur some sort of penalty. But if you can get through it without breaking the rules, you'll learn secrets about the upcoming year, like who is to die or whatever. There's one story apparently where a guy is seeing all these little spirits, and one of them is a pig pushing a cart and it falls over and farts really loudly. And it makes him laugh, so the Arsgang ends without him getting to know anything. Another one, there's a pond and the water in it turns to wine, and this guy drinks from it and says to his companion, "The water's turned to wine." and then some spirit in the water, wine then says, "And now your eyes are mine," and reaches up and strikes him blind. I think I'd like to go 1-1 this year to a little spot a little deeper inside a local cemetery. More on year walk or Arsgang. TL. Dr. Swedish peasant tradition. Earliest records from the 1600s but was said to be old back then. Traditionally done on Christmas Eve or Midsummer Eve around midnight. During the day before the walk, prepare by fasting, avoiding bright lights, and not talking to anyone. Walk to a church out in the woods beyond where you can hear a dog bark or chicken crow. During the walk, don't look back, don't laugh or smile, don't talk, don't feel fear. Spirits may try to make you break these rules but do not. Instructions vary. Maybe walk widdershins around the church 3 times? And look in the keyhole? The dead might be having mass in there though. And they might want to tear you apart. Potential visions of funny animals and lil mousies pulling carts of hay. You also may end up having to make a deal with the devil. Or you could encounter a pig with glowing red eyes and sharp tusks called Glowson. Glowson may have instructions for magic you can steal, but she may also try to tear you in half. On your way back, you'll get visions and omens that reveal who will die in the coming year, how harvests will go, whether there will be war, etc. Those who go on a year walk 9 years in a row are said to become all-knowing, or gain special powers such as healing. It's possible to get stuck in a deal where you're required to go on a year walk every year or face consequences. Possibly originates from pre-Christian times, but there's no hard evidence for that, so shrug who can say.
Well, this year, while in a moment of distress seeking answers and mostly acting theatrical because I was hurt and needed to do something, I wandered into the woods behind my house. I know there are creatures in the woods surrounding where I live, so in the back of my head I was already imagining encountering something out there when I was going out into the woods to seek answers and meditate or something. Well, in the distance I saw a Bigfoot or something. I noticed later that a noise I thought was a neighbor hitting something with a hammer was probably coming from this thing I saw between the trees because it stopped when I saw this thing walk off. So I saw it between the trees, when for a second I had been hearing that thumping. It walked off into the distance, which is what caught my eye as far as movement. For some reason I walked to where it was. It basically walked off a cliff. Steep drop-offs all around. I looked around that area as well, and I noticed there were some trees that looked like they were cut down recently, and some ripped out of the ground. Small little stick trees, maybe 3 to 4 inches thick. The other strange thing was all these trees knocked down, far and out of the way from the telephone pole that was overgrown and weedy. There had been loggers at the time, but where that thing walked off would have made no sense for a logger to go. Nor would it have made sense to log random trees away from overgrown infrastructure. I only connected the sounds I heard later when I thought of something from years ago that I now think must have been another Bigfoot. For AM it was hitting a tree with a tree, it sounded like, then screeched. This year though I basically just saw something big and dark walk off a cliff and had zero reason to think it was human. Few nights ago. Coming home from the bar. About 2 a.m. Not a soul to be seen. Hear shouting behind me. Some dude shouting.
Hey, hey, hey.
Walks up to me. Pretty sure I'm about to be stabbed. It's just some bum. Walks with me to where I'm getting picked up. Along the way he goes on rants about how shit it is being homeless. Starts talking about how he almost killed a guy that night because he threatened to assault him. Would have killed him if he wasn't stopped. Wasn't allowed into the homeless shelter because of this. Got picked up by the police but was let go for some reason. Said he's beaten multiple rapists and such. Refers to himself as the protector. Starts going on schizo rants about the police and shit. We get to where I'm getting picked up. Give him my lighter after he asks for a light. I get picked up and he watches us as we leave. Bums often come and talk to me at night. I'm genuinely surprised I haven't been stabbed or robbed yet.
I went to a remote pioneer cemetery out in the woods with 2 friends. Nothing but dense trees and the stars above, absolute silence except for the three of us walking in near total silence, hardly speaking. One of my friends is very superstitious and frightens easily. He was afraid from the moment we stepped out of the car. Other guy and I loved the idea of the paranormal but are highly skeptical to this day. We were pretty eager to see something that might change that. After forcing our superstitions to stay with us for about 20 minutes, we all were shocked to see a glowing light on the far end of the graveyard, maybe 150 feet away. Small and not very close but as bright and twinkling as a dim star and apparently floating off the ground. A fucking orb, partially obscured by some overgrowth. I'm a little terrified but also extremely fascinated. My skeptic friend was just as stunned as I was. We couldn't know for sure what it was, and perhaps it was moonlight reflecting off some surface and a little fog casting a trick, but my god, it looked like something. I was very afraid, but my superstitious friend went from asking to leave to screaming to running for the car in the span of 10 seconds. Other friend and I gave each other a glance of, "You seeing this shit?" regarding the light, but we took off after our friend. Both of us were getting pretty spooked at this point, and we were also worried about our friend tripping and hurting himself. I kept glancing back at the light while we shouted after our friend. The light remained. We didn't shout long. I feel so awful in retrospect for disturbing the silence a place like that deserves. Luckily, we never tripped over a gravestone or anything. We finally hopped into the car and still could just barely see the light through the fence. It might have moved, but we couldn't tell. At this point, we called it a night and raced out of there. Don't know what to make of it.
Don't know where these other guys live that has so much paranormal stuff. Weirdest thing I've seen was when I used to get up a lot earlier than I do now. I noticed that at around 3:30 a.m. on Sundays, sometimes some other days as well, mostly grey unmarked vans go around picking people up and taking them somewhere. At first I thought it was for some kind of job, but then I noticed that the people the vans picked up were extremely different. Like young women, old men, old ladies, homeless-looking guys and relatively well-off-looking young men. All getting picked up at what looked like random, relatively close together spots on the street. They kind of acted like they all knew each other and this was routine, but you could tell they were also in a bit of a hurry. Really weird.
I can't sleep. Start going for night walks. Learn which public park that close at dusk are actually patrolled. An ignored one is right on the river and the dike has a trail on top of it. Hell yes. MP3. Night with a clear sky and full moon. We night walking. Get to the park and start to walk the dike, a sheet of rock that is formed in a fracture of a pre-existing rock body. Looking at the river while I walk, jamming to tunes. The moon is very bright tonight. Suddenly see someone in the river swimming. Come down and call out to see if they need help. Swimmer starts drifting towards the shore while still swimming against the current. Think about it. X launches. It's winter, so the water is way too cold. At least one person drowns in this stretch of river every summer, and I can't hear this swimmer making any noise while they stroke, including their limbs entering and exiting the water. Also, they're naked and pale with long, unkempt hair. Even if this is a person, I probably don't want to meet them. Time to bail. I dashed out of there and started sticking to routes that don't go near the river. I've been meaning to get into Native American mythology related to the area to see if maybe I ran into some sort of nature spirit.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.